Did you guys see the Dave Smith Douglas Murray debate?
I saw the first half. I watched the first half.
I think Dave Smith handily trounced Douglas Murray. What say you, gents?
Man, I only caught 15 or 20 minutes of it, the first 20 minutes of it. And it was basically Douglas Murray saying, look, what I don't like is people coming in saying the most ridiculous stuff. The earth is a donut. He didn't say that. I'm saying that, but ridiculous stuff. And then when people call him on it, and I'm going to call out Bill Burr for this because he went on The View and was talking about like, yay, Luigi. And then when they ask him about it, he's like, I'm just a comedian. Don't look at me. Dude, you went on national. I don't care. You can't hide behind your credentials, bro. You said it. Get behind it. Now, it's the same with this. You can't just say crap and then plead like, no, leave me alone. Look at my badge. It says comedian on it.
Dave going, I'm just a comedian, man.
Yeah, and Dave does do that. Dave, you're one of my best friends. I fucking love you, man. But I don't like that tactic. You're a human first, and the things you say you're responsible for that.
But the reason I disagree with that is that Dave is not deflecting, oh, no, I'm wrong now. I better say I'm a comedian. Now I'm going to claim to be right. He's saying, the point is, I am a regular person who is concerned about the things that I have seen, and you're asking me to get into the intricacies of something that is not pertinent to what the principle.
Yeah, Douglas Murray is essentially like, you don't need to have an opinion about everything, kind of, if you're not an expert. And you're like, we're literally all in the opinion business. Like, that is the business we're in.
Like, with all due respect to Douglas Murray, because I met him recently.
I like Douglas Murray. Yeah, I like both. I know both of them. I like.
He said. He's like, have you ever been to the checkpoints or whatever at Gaza? And he's like, no. And he's like, really? When was the last time you were in Israel? And Dave's like, I've never gone. He goes, really? You've never been? Never? And Dave's like, no. Am I not allowed to talk about it now? Like, have you ever been to Nazi Germany? And then Douglas Murray, I think, makes a very, very awful point when he says, well, I make it a point not to talk about a country unless I've been there. And I'm like, come on, dude, you're convincing nobody.
Well, because he's British. He doesn't understand the ethos of America.
I've never been to Afghanistan, and I'm going to complain about what the U.S. did in Afghanistan. I've never been to Iraq, and I'm going to complain. Like, it's silly that he's like, you should go. Dave is entirely allowed to talk about Israel, Palestine, what's happening to the Palestinians without having been there. That's silly.
Yeah.
So the issue I largely take with Douglas Murray's position in the debate was it was very much, it was very dry, overt talking point we hear of, like, appeal to authority. Like, if you've not been there, you can't talk, and you're not the experts. It's anybody saying whatever they want, and you don't know what you're talking about here. Whereas Dave is like, I'm a regular guy who lives in this country and is upset at what is happening in this country pertaining to our taxes, our involvement in the Middle East. We should not be involved in these things. I happen to agree with Dave in this regard, and I think this endless multi-decade, generational, constantly being in a state of warfare is insane, and I think it's unfair to say to me or to anybody, because you've not traveled to these places, you shouldn't speak of them, as if an average American plumber whose taxes are taken by force to fund war in the Middle East, be it or Ukraine, Israel or otherwise, has to travel there, ask the general or any of the experts what's going on before he's allowed to say, stop taking my money to fund your wars. So I'm with Dave on this one.
Yeah. And I do it I agree with that. And I agree with Douglas Murray. Essentially, he's like, you bring on these people and to Joe Rogan and you're like, they're not experts. And like, I agree. Maybe bring on the person with an expert. But again, like these people will go on and talk about 500 different things.
And this is
in one episode. Right. You're like, how can you bring in an expert? That person's like, I don't want to talk about that for the whole show. I want to talk about that for 5 minutes and then move on to something else.
It's an interesting conundrum for Joe Rogan as a podcast host, because what do? He just wants to have people on that he's interested in or thinks are cool. And then if they start talking about one side of a view, is he now beholden to have the other guy in that he has no interest in talking to just because he's got...
And again, like another thing with Douglas Murray is, talking about like the Israel-Palestine stuff, or like he was talking about Ukraine a lot, and he goes, yeah, you bring people in and they're talking like favorably about Russia. And you're like, the whole mainstream media gives you the other side of that argument about like the pro-Ukraine thing. Right?
I think this episode shows us why in the long term, I think Israel... I don't know what happens to Israel, but I know that U.S. will not be supporting.
He didn't tell you?
Who? Bibi?
Yeah.
We sat down and he was like, I'm worried that America is not going to give us any money anymore. The Israelis did express great gratitude for the $3.8 billion the U.S. gives them. But one of the things I explicitly said was in 10 years, support for Israel's in question. In 20 years, the U.S. is not a part of the Middle Eastern equation. Dave Smith represents much more of the populist right. And Donald Trump is pro-Israel, but the populist right is it's not even about whether you like Israel or don't. It's that on the right you have very anti-Israel and very I don't care about Israel. On the left, you have I hate Israel. So what does that mean in 10 years? As the older folks are the ones who defend Israel.
Yeah.
When they die and they're not voting anymore, and I don't mean to be crude, you're going to have a bunch of Trump, like libertarian-esque, right-leaning individuals, anti-woke saying, yeah, I don't want to give money to Israel.
Sure.
You're going to have
The thing is, Israel doesn't even need the money. That's the crazy part. I don't even know why.
care.
I don't even know why they give it or take it because they don't need it. It's
it just goes into
fraction of their GDP.
It buys U.S. weapons,
Yeah.
basically. Basically, the U.S. is giving weapons.
But I mean, like Israel has the money to buy the weapons. Like $3.8 billion is not their.
There could be an argument that like it's an excuse for not saying that it's a good idea, but the U.S. giving the money to or giving weapons to Israel is an excuse for the United States to dump more money into weapons development.
Sure.
Sure. I've not heard a single good argument from the pro-Israel side, and I'm not saying this to rag on people who are pro-Israel because they're allowed to be. I have not heard a good argument as to why Americans should be using their weapons development tax dollars, whatever you want to call it, for Israel's military.
Unless like America's worried that if we don't sell it to them, then Russia will.
I think
We
that's
had
our bulwark
China,
against
I
the Suez, holding the Suez. And if Israel wasn't there, we'd have no.
I mean, but all the ships
carriers.
literally
That's
right now.
actually a really great
Yeah,
point.
but
That's
all
probably
the
the best
ships right
argument.
now are going around the Suez Canal anyways.
Because of the Houthis.
Yeah, because of
But
Houthis.
this-
So
this-
they can do it. It's inconvenient,
But this explains a lot, actually. So Trump wants to control the Northwest Passage with Greenland. He just struck a deal on Panama, and this is why he's pro-Israel. They want all of the trade canals to control global trade.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I would say that's the best reason I've heard, but I still don't know it's the best argument.
But like that's the Suez Canal is the reason why America has been backing Israel for
Well, actually, I'll put it this way.
70 years.
Right. That's an argument. Indeed. I don't know if it's good enough reason for us to be entangled in Middle Eastern conflict.
Yeah, what would happen if the power just like ebbed back and then that block? Because I heard that Iran is about one piece away from concluding their nuclear program. Like,
Trump, this Saturday, I believe, is going to be having the nuclear talks with Iran. And I don't think people understand just how close to war with Iran we actually are. I think one of the reasons they had this meeting of so there was a press meeting, a press conference. So Trump meets with Netanyahu. They have your traditional press gaggle, and then they had the Chatham House with influencers. And the two principal topics were the tariffs. That was the number one issue. What's the trade deal with Israel and the U.S. going to look like? And war with Iran. And largely what was talked about was war with Iran. And I think the intention of the Israelis was to try and play this game, which I don't believe works, of once they come for us, they come for you next. And this is really funny because I can't remember. I think I know who said this, but I'm not going to reveal it's their business. They just straight up said to Netanyahu, no, they're not.
Yeah.
Like I just thought that was really funny. Because
that was a whole ocean.
Exactly.
Like there's a geographical component.
There was a bit of pushback where they were
Not in
just
the back
like,
of your backyard.
we're 20,000 miles away. I probably shouldn't, okay, look.
It was Dave Rubin.
no need.
No.
to say that.
No. It's because
no idea.
it's up to that person. I respect sources if I'm not going to reveal what they said, but I will say this: the Israelis conveyed that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, the U.S. is in danger, and then there was a couple of people who just said, "No, we're not," and like that's ridiculous. We don't need to be involved in your war. And I think the general idea, it doesn't work. This game doesn't work. You can't be like, I'm warning you. Phil's going to get you. You're like, I'll deal with Phil if Phil tries to get me. But just because
I'll deal with you, Phil.
You're having problems,
get
doesn't
dealt
mean we're going to
with.
get involved.
Speaking of the Israeli war, that country has been at war since day one of inception. It is a war country. That country is war. It has been put there in the middle of a conflict, right after a conflict. It's just, that's all. I told you guys before the show yesterday, I like Ben, not Netanyahu. He seems pretty cool, intelligent, charismatic, but he's born in a wartime culture, and he's a warrior. So
Ben?
Ben, yeah. Benny
boy.
and then so he knows how to fight and kill. That's his job. That's what he's done his whole life.
Well, what I can tell you is the annoying thing about the Israel derangement syndrome people who are, one, they're showing a fake clip of us on the show where I was saying that it doesn't matter who fired the shot in the false flag in the context of they won as soon as they engage in the false flag because their supporters are never going to believe it. Like you could say the Gulf of Tonkin for a long time was believed to be a false flag, but they said it was a conspiracy theory and people were pro-America were like, get out of here with that nonsense. And then in like 2013 or whatever, they're like, oh, actually, yeah, we faked that whole thing.
Yeah.
So the people who perpetrate it are going to use it and they're going to get away with it. But the frustrating thing is the meeting that happens is largely about tariffs and war with Iran. I end up bringing up the gist of the story is this. Israel seems to be ignorant of the shifting landscape in the United States among young people towards sentiment to Israel, which is, as I mentioned, on the right, either we don't want to be involved in Israel or we don't like Israel. And on the left, we don't like Israel. So this idea that the Israelis wanted to communicate to prominent individuals, Iran's going to get a nuclear weapon and you're all in danger, was meaningless.
Sure.
Because in 10 years, we're not involved. And in 20 years, who cares about Iran? We're not going to be a part
Also,
of.
America can deal with Iran if need be.
Well, certainly there are war hawks that want to go to war with Iran.
Yeah.
There were people in Trump's sphere that want this.
Oh, it's been since the '79 overthrow of the Shah. They
Right.
overthrew a democratically elected Iranian he was the Shah of Iran, and then they installed the Ayatollah, this religious zealot, and now they're like, hey, it's a bad guy. We have to attack them now. And you're like, we set it up.
The annoying thing is that in trying to understand what the intentions of the Israelis are and what's going to happen, you have people online who just like this is why I was saying it's funny because they're saying I claimed Nick Fuentes was an op by the Israelis when I said or the idea is it's more likely, and I'm being somewhat tongue in cheek, because when people like this go online and just say something like they tweet you're a Jew so you don't count or I won't listen to you, I'm like, okay, you're helping Israel. You're making regular Americans be like, I don't want to be a party to whatever that is.
Sure.
But Dave Smith, I praise all the time because he's funny, charismatic, calm, and collected, and explains from a rational American point of view why we don't want to be involved in funding these things.
I've mixed feelings about this now. I am very much into global peace, but at the same time, I understand that if you just sit defensively and wait, things can come at you that's what ballistics are. Okay, so
Well, that's why we're going to have a beautiful Iron Dome.
that's true, and that's why we have our fingers away from our homeland so that we're not letting anyone near us. So we have this area protected, essentially. If we just let it go and Israel were to fall, and then the Suez is shut down and controlled by
China.
potentially Chinese, Russian, Iranian coalition or whatever.
Yeah.
That might not. I don't.
But again, you just have to go around. You just have to go around Africa.
It's not easy to do
But it's what they're doing right now.
because of the Houthis.
Because of the Houthis.
So
Like
Trump
they
bombs the Houthis.
Yeah,
like, give us back our canal.
But he's bombing, even with bombing the Houthis, like they're still going. Like I saw a graph or whatever image
best-
today, and they
so-
all are currently just going around.
We got to go to chats over here, but Cam Higby was on the show the other day, and he's very pro-Israel. He says he's a raging Zionist, and he was arguing that we should fund Israel's military because they test our weapons or whatever. And I'm like, that's not a good argument, dude. We can test our weapons, and he's like, yeah, but they're not battle tested. And I'm like, okay, I just don't see that as a good argument.
Yeah, that's not a good argument.
The Suez Canal is interesting because losing control of that cedes control to the BRICS nations, and that's going to create a multipolar world. That being said, although that is an argument, I don't think it's a strong enough argument to justify the U.S. getting involved in more ground wars in the Middle East.
Oh God, the Russians. They want that the Bosphorus Strait. They want to go through Turkey and from the and now they want this. I'm sure for them to think of the
Sure,
Suez-
everybody wants it.
And it's not that like we can't share the Suez Canal with the Russia. Of course we can. I don't know this obsessive military control thing.
It's just a big game of Risk.
God, yeah, Trump's not going to back down from this, and I think that's exactly why Trump is pro-Israel. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.